Hello and welcome to today's session about building your sales pipeline for consultants. It's good to have you here today and looking forward to the session together with Kaisa.
Hi, everybody. Good to see everybody here. Yes, we have a packed hour ahead of us. And let's get started.
Yeah. Now, it's very much about building a sales pipeline for consultants. And we're going to go through these agenda items in different aspects as we work our way through them. So you will at least get our take on how to build a sales pipeline and how that works. We can take questions as we go. We have had some beforehand, which I hope we'll be able to address during this session. And the majority of this session is about building the sales pipeline. And then towards the end, we've about 10 minutes on a way of adding a new service to a business consultant. And that's going to be today's session. Today, it's myself and Kaisa.
So just something very, very quickly about me. So worked in my own companies, in other people companies, working with getting more customers, getting profitable customers. And on top of that, I also bought a lot of digital services, which is also an experience I will bring with me into this session. And last but not least, worked with a lot of small companies. I know what it's like to have limited resources. In some ways, I actually like that because it means you have to get really, really focused and prioritize how you spend your time and how you spend your money.
Yeah. And Kaisa, if people didn't realize already, is Swedish and does, I suppose, half your work in Ireland and half your work in Sweden. Rough.
Yes, exactly. So yes, if there is anybody speaking Swedish here, feel free to use the chat for that also. But the session is going to be in English.
Yeah, and we can take it in both. I'm Edward Nugent. I'll just put these on. I actually started in academia and finished my doctorate there, and then wanted to go into industry. So I did my corporate life for about 5 odd years, went into startups, and then just over 20 years ago, I started my own business, initially in analysis, and then we started getting into direct to consumer. And this is where I started my whole digital sales and marketing journey. And advertising was a big part of that. We were some of the early customers for Google AdWords. Made it work for our own business. And I suppose about 10 years ago, was asked a lot, how does it work? How did you make it work? What do we do? And that's when I put together the digital scorecard framework. And it was by accident, not by design. It was basically answering a number of questions. Well, this is what we do in different steps. And all those steps went into elements, and the whole elements together became a framework, which is applicable to any company. I very much take the strategic view. I do like the digital and the tech and the tools. It kind of holds it all together based upon how customers buy. I'm based in Ireland. I've lived in and worked in the UK for 6 odd years, Sweden for 8 odd years, Spain, and then Ireland. So we have a broad perspective here today. Now, when we're doing a sales pipeline, this is really what you're after. Everyone knows a good sales pipeline when they see one. You have a queue of future clients. Instead of you trying to sell to clients are beginning to buy from you. And I don't know how many of you here have experienced that, but it is a profound experience. So when someone describes to you what they want to buy from you, rather than you having to try and sell all the time, it changes the whole game. The classic famine and feast, really busy, things going well when you have a client, and then things not going so well when you don't. And that's a classic for these, and avoiding those. And with a sales pipeline, you also have more business security. Now, everyone knows we should have this. The difficulty is building it, and we cannot do this in an hour. What we'll do is cover the topics that need to be covered, how you put this in place. That we will cover within the hour. Putting the whole thing in place and live, that's a long process. It is work. There is no magic bullet. You have to put the pieces together yourself. And we're going to show you a lot of the pieces here today. Starting with this question. Now, too many focus on this as if they're a consumer business. Every business needs to answer this question. If you're a consulting company, why should your clients buy from you as opposed to all the other options available to them? Now, I've come across this quite a bit, and many would say, yeah, but I'm unique. No one else can do exactly what I do. The reality is most clients don't see it that way. Most clients will see it from their perspective as to what they want solved, and consultants are a dime a dozen. So which one? And the more you look at it from the client perspective, the more you realize this. So we need to be able to answer this question in a very clear way for our clients. And it's only for our clients. It's not for the world at large. It's for those who are interested in what we do. How we do it is part of what we're going to go through today. This slide, I actually used this yesterday in a very different session, but it's equally applicable here. If you're known, it's much easier for someone to buy from you. Now, when I say that, it sounds ridiculous. Of course, obvious. What are you talking about? Why even bring it up? This was based on actual data, and it was from TikTok, and this is consumer-based data. Our data, and not all factual. That's the only thing with B2B. It's a bit more difficult with consultants. 2 times is very low. If you're well known as a consultant, it's more likely to be 10 times. Easier for you to sell a product or someone to buy from you than if you're not known. Now, we all have to start somewhere, and not being known doesn't mean you're having a chance. It just means you need to really have a better proposition. We need to have an offer that somebody can't say no to. Whereas when you're known, your prices can be a lot higher. Your positioning is a lot better. And this is again towards your target market. So how do we achieve that? Now, oftentimes in a consulting business, we're looking at our network. Either meeting them, talking to them, trying to influence other people. We're looking at our positioning in the market. Who are we? What do we stand for? What do our clients think we stand for? We put together offers. The latest, if you look at LinkedIn, is everyone wants to be a thought leader. And I think the one sign of somebody not being a thought leader is when they say they are, to be honest. You don't have to say it if you are. And we see a lot of that on LinkedIn in the moment. And then we have the other fallacy of let's post lots of content. Again, we're trying to do the same thing. We're trying to see and stick out. But most of this doesn't build a sales pipeline. Most of this becomes tactical. So after I need a client, then we start posting lots of content. Then we start networking because now I have time. I don't have clients, therefore I have time to network, so I'll do that. I'll buy a course or training or coaching from somebody on LinkedIn to be a thought leader within my space. And I don't know about you or the people in this session today, but I would say 99 times out of 100, all of those things fail because they're not systemized, they're reactionary, and they're a means to try and just get the next client. Posting content is the toughest gig in the world to get a result on. It's easy to do. Everyone can post. Not enough people do. But less people post with purpose. And if we just say, let's say posting on LinkedIn to try and get a client, that's the toughest gig in the world. There's certain things you need to have in place to make that work. And most don't. It's still a really useful exercise, but as a means to get clients, it's a tougher gig. Go to events, meetings, and our LinkedIn profile, also quite important. So we have all these pieces we're trying to put together. Typical symptoms of companies and consulting companies that don't have this right is basically customers are not buying enough, or they're not buying at all. So we've got these great services. We know it'll help all these clients, but they're not buying them. Every sale is hard won. We're quoting. It comes down to price. There's haggling. It's just difficult. Other ones, email list not growing. Everyone should have an email list of some form. I don't care what business you're in. It is one of the more important elements to your sales pipeline. Posting content but getting no results. That's very common because it's a tough gig. This post and you get loads of inbound leads. It's nonsense. Absolute nonsense. Advertising not working. So we do advertising to try and sell our services when we're not busy, and we get a poor response. Again, because we're doing it when we need clients rather than when we don't. And it's much better to be advertising when you don't need them. It's a much better position to be in. Customers are not seeking you out. Again, you should have some inbound there to say, how can you help me? Growing old of the customer base. This is a classic. People we know are buying from us, but we're getting it hard to get new ones in. So all of these things we need to, we often recognize as problems and symptoms. If you have a sales pipeline, we can mitigate most of these. And that's why we should actually have something to do. We often talk about know your target client and even personas. I'm really not a fan of personas at all, but they work for some people, and you know what? Use what works for you. I don't particularly like them for many reasons. But I can tell you one of them is, it's only half the battle. We need to then bring them into our world, or we need to join theirs. And there's an expression from, it's actually a book that was written during the pandemic by Matt Sykes, which says, it's one of the best lines I've heard in sales and marketing. And that was, we need to join the conversation going on inside our client's head. And that's what wins clients. What challenge have they got? What are they thinking now? How can we actually get them to have us part of their solution? And that's part of building your sales pipeline. Two important parts to this. One is the messaging, so what we say, how we say it. And the second is processes and tools. One without the other tends to fail. So you need both within the business, and we need to systemize. And we're going to go through some of that today. If you think back yourself, when did you buy something recently? Why did you buy it? And especially if I think now in B2B terms, you will find, and I certainly do, that in some instances, I buy something because I've been thinking about it for a long time. And I've seen this person's work for a long time. I'm thinking, well, actually, yeah, maybe down the line I should join that group, or I should pay them for a service. And then there's other instances where I've seen someone for the first time, really liked what they're doing, and immediately bought. We've all done this because what they're saying has to speak to us. So the latter one I can tell you is from Amazon. We work with B2C clients who work with our own Amazon setup as well, and direct to consumer and to businesses. And there's somebody we're working with now. I had a need, or I knew I was having a need, I would have a need. I came across somebody who spoke exactly to that need. It's a no-brainer to buy. In other cases, I know by joining a group that works with their sales pipeline, and actually every month you have accountability and you work your way through your business system, I knew, you know what, that would be useful to me when I'm ready. And that might be 12 months down the line. And then you buy that. This is how it works. So we need a sales pipeline that makes use of those both cases. And I'm sure you've gone through those cases yourself. And the key part to all of this is we have to solve a real need. And speaking to that need matters. And if we satisfy many aspects of that demand, you're more likely to succeed. In other words, speaking to the client, their needs, resonating with them, you're much more likely to succeed. And we have to put a system in place that does that. So how do we make it work? Speak to the need, invite them to take an action. We have a follow-up, and clients act on what we say. And this is really easy. At least it looks easy in the slide. it's actually hard work because you're taking people from prospects to leads to customers. And that happens over time. And in some cases, it's like the example I gave earlier, that'll happen really quickly, almost instantly. And why is that? It's because you spoke to the client who had the need and takes the action. In other cases, it takes a lot more time and a lot more follow-up to make it happen. To do that, we need systems in place to build the sales pipeline, to work it, to make it actually happen. The difficulty with consulting firms is they often are too busy for this when they're with clients, especially if they're, 1 or 2 person consultancies. Larger ones tend to have less of a problem with this. But then again, they also get busy. And sales and marketing tends to be a little bit less structured. But it has to be ongoing all the time. Otherwise, we'll end up with a famine where we have no clients when we really need them.
And Edward, I'd just like to wanted to jump in there also, and just I think one of the key points here is it's a process. It's nothing that happens overnight. To think that the clients would just land in your lap, I know the ones that are here, you all know that's unrealistic also. But it's to define then what are these different types of steps. The clients that you want, maybe right now they don't want to buy from you, but when they need help in maybe 2-3 months time, you want to make sure that you're on top of that shopping list, because you're the ones that have been building the relationship. You're the one that they have as top of mind. Yes, here's somewhere where I can go to get help to solve this problem.
And it's very close to branding.
Yeah.
Right. And I would say it is, but it's closely linked to a client need. That's the easiest way to do it. Don't start thinking about Kellogg's as a brand. This is not that. This is about consulting businesses. So I'm associated with solving these problems. When someone has those problems, you're top of the heap, just like Isa was saying. And that's ideal. And that's what we need to get to. It doesn't randomly happen. We need to plan for it and decide how to make it work. Now, one example is this one. So we see this a lot. Is advertising working for your business? And the vast majority is not. We know it's a huge pain point. And where are we now? We have, 14% happy with it. It works well, which is a terrible number, So this is a definite pain point. But it's not just about advertising. So we know the problem is the advertisement. There's the landing page it gets to. It's the calls to action. It's the thank you page, the welcome email, and the follow-up sequence. All of that makes advertising work. So in speaking to clients who have issues with advertising, as an example, we understand this is the actual problem. It's somewhere in this puzzle that you can make it then work. Consulting companies have the exact same problem. How do you do the advertising? What are you advertising, really? That's usually what it comes down to. And in the ad world, actually, that's strategy. It's too often forgotten today. People go straight for the ad, not what business are we in? How are we really going to get people into our pipeline? And that's why advertising tends to have a lot of challenges and failures. Another one here, and this is from 262 companies. So we run Digital Scorecard, which is many aspects. It's a framework, but also it's a test for evaluating how you're using digital. This is the average benchmark for the past couple of years. So the average company that we're measuring is here, the blue line. They're well below what we would say is a minimum target. Never mind best in practice or best in class. So there's a huge pain point for companies in making best use of digital for their sales and marketing. This is all about building your sales pipeline, because that is lead gen, lead to sale, and after sale. So we all need to try and work with this and see, okay, how do we fix this problem? So there's an opportunity, and I'll come to this later in the session, because there's options for companies and actually management consultants and advisors in particular to begin to help their clients. But that'll come towards the end of the session. But there's a classic pain point. So if we are helping our clients, what do we speak to? Well, we speak to this problem. Because then the clients will recognize the problem and then they're more likely to ask for help. So in your world, in your consulting business, you need to see, well, what is the problem you're really solving? How do you navigate that? How do you break that down for clients? That's all we have to do. And we do this by understanding the role we really play in clients' life or world. Do we stand out or not? Most don't. Most blend. Most are afraid to stand out. And the second part of this, and I would say the most important part, is here. What are we really trying to achieve for clients? How do we really help them? You know, it's the hardest piece because you need to step back from your own business. So when we're doing this work and helping companies with their sales pipeline, that's where we spend a lot of time. So I want to work out, so how are you really helping clients? What do they really want from you now? How do you address that? And it's often different than your product. And you break that down. So that's something for you to begin to think about. When you're doing your system, this is what you have to build. There's 4 things that I think I'm going to look at here within your sales pipeline or system or whatever you want to call it. And the first is how you help clients. And we could put that under positioning. Now, very few people want to work with positioning, yet it's the most important thing. So if you're associated with a specific challenge clients have as somebody who can help and solve that problem, that is a fantastic position to have. That's something to work towards, because then when they have that problem, you'll be either recommended or they'll know you already to buy from you. So it's quite important. This could be also seen as branding, but I actually go more for positioning in this because there's a few more details to it that we look at. Then how do your clients find you? And I've deliberately worded it like that because it's your job that they do find you. And it's not just about SEO. SEO is only a very small piece. It's one way of getting traffic. But how do they find you? How do they know you exist? That's your job, not theirs. The better your positioning, the easier that is. They'll want to find you, right? They'll want to seek you out. They'll want to work out who is the best in class for this particular task I've got. And then how do you engage clients? And this is your mechanism to engage them. So when they're starting out and they're thinking, well, maybe I need help with this problem, but I'm not quite sure if Kaiser's the one to help me here or not. What's the step? And that's, again, your job. Some people will do outreach directly and message you and say, I want to call and can you help? That tends to be the smaller group. There's a larger group that's there. They're looking at you, they're thinking about it, but they're not actually taking the step. How do you make that easy for them? And that's an engagement mechanism, which I'll come to. And I find that to be the crucial piece. Most of you here, I think, if you have a lead, if you have someone saying, I'm interested in what you do, you can probably sell them something. You can probably take them through different stages and phone calls and emails to get to a stage where you come to an agreement. How do you kick that off? And this is something that can be also systemized and should be. This is the part that we find the most opportunity, but also the part that people often give up on, so that the pipeline never starts, in effect. And that's the next one. How do you keep going? I see lots of saying, okay, I'm going to do outreach on LinkedIn. So you connect with 20 people every week and you message them and you get a client or two out of it. And then you stop connecting with the 20 people every week and you stop the outreach because now you're doing your job and working. There's no consistency to it. And it stops and it slows down and your pipeline basically withers again. So it's starting and stopping. And we see this all the time. So we need to have consistency and keep it growing. And that's what sales pipeline actually is. So if we take the first one on positioning, the most important piece here is for you to make a decision. What do you stand for? And to dare to stand out, to be different and not be afraid of it. One part of this is to be hyper-targeted. So you know exactly your client base. And to say it is, let's say in our case, we work with consultants, obviously, but not all consultants. Tends to be business consultants and advisors, which is only one small segment. We tend to work also with a lot of e-commerce companies, but it's not any e-commerce companies. It's specific types of e-commerce companies of a specific size, which tend to be family-led and run. So you have targets because it means you can speak to them. It's really hard though, because you're excluding people. And the instinct for most of us is, well, actually, to get more clients, I should actually target more people because my odds are better. But in fact, your odds get worse. So hyper-targeting is one part. Taking a leadership role, deciding what you stand for, knowing what you stand for. And not just being following and waiting for something to happen. What you can do here, we often do surveys of an industry. So we can get the status of whatever your sector happens to be. That's a great way of standing out. Again, it doesn't just happen, it takes work. Speaking to real problems and treating them like real people is another part. So instead of being vague, we're actually very targeted. These are all interrelated. And instead of using woolly consulting language, we actually speak real language directly to real people. There's too much vague language within the consulting world. I am a reluctant consultant is what I call myself. I don't tend to be, because I usually dive into a business rather than advise on the side. I'm getting better at that. But you need to speak to them about the real problems that they're facing and speak to them like people and less of the waffle, I suppose. Showing proof. This is what works. Of all of these things, that's probably the most important. So if you have a particular challenge or problem, let's say you want to achieve something, you want to make advertising work. If someone shows you 3 or 4 examples of companies who have made advertising work, there's a good chance you'll take notice. There's even a better chance you're likely to show up and ask the person, okay, can you help me? Social proof. Reviews. We all use them. We use them for consumers, as consumers when we're buying, but we also use them as in business. There's different ways of doing this. And the biggest thing is to avoid bland and boring, because right now, the world, it's very noisy. Everyone seems to have got very busy. Our attention spans have got quite short. If you're bland and you blend right in, you're not going to be noticed. Doesn't matter how good your work is. So standing out and avoiding being bland is important. One of the most important things, I'm using advertising too much here, but probably because we did a session yesterday with a little more advertising than usual, it's on my mind. One of the most powerful triggers to get someone to notice an advertisement is to use comedy, because it stands out. It is not bland, it's different. But very few use it. At the moment, it's actually, I think it's not an all-time low of use of comedy, but it's very low. It's coming back because people have noticed. It tends to work. Again, avoid being bland.
Edward, I'm just going to jump in there also in terms of the advertising, because there's another point there that I think is relevant, and that is actually to be repetitive, as boring as that sounds, that you actually use the same message over and over again, because after a while, something starts to stick. And it's not just for advertising, for other type of messaging also. I think you can reuse content, you can reuse different types of material many, many more times than you think you can do.
Yeah. It's we often get tired of our own message before our clients do. So we end up changing it up. So this consistency, you're right, is really important. We'll come to some of that during today as well. Systems, frequency, recency, consistency. They matter. When someone's buying something, recency, in other words, I heard of it more recently, matters a lot. Frequency, I've seen it many times. It's not just a flash in the pan. It's not random. And consistency, they're not changing their message every 5 minutes. They're actually being consistent as how they help and who they help. So they become the real deal. Which is the point I think you just made, Kaiser, with advertising. Exact same thing. Chopping and changing all the time means, well, what do these people stand for? What do they really do? We started working with consultants, I think it was 2016, when we started our first engagement with consultants. We don't actually promote it that much. We're doing more this year because we looked at our business and thought, well, actually, that's an area we should do more with, because we started it a long time ago and we have consulting partners for this. And we help them build sales pipelines. So having messages that are regular, about a similar thing, matter, because then they're more likely to show up, more likely to bear you in mind when they're doing it. The good thing with this is systems can help and tools can help. And this is where we're going to get to. Your mechanism. Now, I can't stress enough how important this is. So if you think about it in terms of, even though it's consultants and even though it's B2B, we all understand walking through a shopping mall. What makes us stop? What gets our attention? Or we're scrolling on social. So we're on LinkedIn, for example. What gets our attention? What makes us stop? We get a couple of hundred emails a day. Which one do we read? So getting this attention matters, and getting the engagement mechanism right really matters. It's the starting point for most. Now, the sales process can be really quick, or it could be slow, depending on the business you're in, the complexity and all of that. But the mechanism matters. There's loads of options here. I tend to advise that you get one right, and then you add more to it, but you nail one, because this is the top of your sales pipeline. I'm going to show both a business design and a sales pipeline in a few minutes. So getting engagement, one option is just buy now. That does work, even for consultants, even B2B. One of the best mechanisms for that actually is this. You get people to sign up for a webinar, you spend an hour discussing something, and then have an offer that they buy for. That happens. Or it's a phone call, which turns into a purchase. So we're not doing that today. There's no big pitch or lead up to a pitch. We have offers, we work with consultants, you're welcome to join us. But the buy now does work if you've aligned for that. Now, it's tricky to do. Get more information. A demo. I tend to find a demo and buy now to be very close. I only want a demo if I'm interested in buying. I'm really there. So I tend to have them close together. A webinar such as this, it's a call to action. Webinars are fantastic. They're not the easiest to do. There's more to it than meets the eye in a way, but they are fantastic mechanisms to get people into a session where you discuss, where they have a chance to experience you, and then take an action afterwards. So I recommend them to a lot of people. They're not for everyone because they do you need to be used to it. It takes a while. That's all. Free trials, newsletters. Very few newsletters are good calls to action. Very few. Saying that, yesterday's session, I showed an example of one that I think is fantastic. But it wasn't sold as a newsletter. It was sold as a membership that was free. And it was given all the reasons to join. Loads can do this. Tips too, I'm a big fan of that. Because if it's tips about a subject area that you're an expert in, it means people who sign up for that are interested in your area. So it's a great filter. Just like webinars, they're great filters. So all of these mechanisms should also be filters. If it's a mechanism to say, oh, a free coffee in Starbucks, I don't particularly like that, because lots of people would be interested in that, and I have no idea if they're interested in my services or not. So that's why I wouldn't use that as a filter. Or it could be some sort of special offer. Quizzes, surveys, they work really well, because again, they're filters. You're asking people their questions, you're asking their problems. Tests also work really well. There's more, I haven't put them here. For consultants, you can have download top 10 tips for your sector or for the specific problem you solve. People will sign up for that. The interesting thing is on that, it's a side note, most people don't read those very much. All the research suggests they don't, but they will almost go through fire to get them. It's quite funny, but then they won't do much with them. So we don't use them very often. Whereas webinars, people showing up is more useful than them getting something. But you design it to suit. All it is a means, if there's a crowd of your customers out there, what's going to get them to put up their hand? That's it. And you consistently make that work. Webinars just happens to be one of ours. It's our main one. And we do 3 to 4 webinars a month for that reason.
Edward, I just want to mention the surveys here also as a really good tool. I think our experience is that in general, people actually like surveys. People like to be asked what they think about different things. You ask for their opinion. You ask for their help. So our experience would be very, very positive from using different types of service, and not just the traditional customer service. How happy are you with our service? Well, if somebody gives you 9 out of 10, great. That's great content that you can use when you talk about your business. That's back to what Edward was talking about before, giving you credibility. But there's so many other things you can learn from doing a survey, as in how are people thinking, what's their buying patterns like, what's their main problem right now, what they're struggling with. So service can be really, really good to start building that relationship. And when the survey is done, you obviously go back again, you talk about the results, so you can build a whole cycle around running a survey. And
consultants helping clients do surveys for sales, there's a market. It's a specific market. And actually, we don't do customer satisfaction surveys in that sense. We do a lot of surveys, but they're much more surveys for sales. So you actually make money out of them. And there's specific tricks as to how to do that. More experience, I suppose, than tricks. All of these works. So we need to find out what is our mechanism to get people in to our business. And then, how do we keep going? This is actually the trick. We can all say and start really well and say, okay, here's our engagement mechanism, and now we're going to try and get this. How do we keep going week on week and month on month? That's what matters a lot. And that's the winning and losing of this. And that can be automated, but it's all about systems, tools, and structure. Structure basically means, how does my business flow? And I'll show a funnel in a second, and then a business design. And then tools, how do you make sure they're going from step to step? And we're systemizing that, because this is where it matters. I've so many cases where consultants would start out really well, and they'll do their LinkedIn, and there'll be outreach and posting. And then every week or so, the number of outreaches goes down. It's hard to just keep going. When you get the results, it begins to get better. So this is what a sales pipeline looks like. Showing, yes, giving courses are good sales and features in sales. Yeah, they are. We've actually changed an awful lot of how we work. We do an awful lot. I would say now it's 90% one-to-one courses and training. Partly because of how we operate. There's many models out there to try and pack as many people into a recorded session, therefore you'll be able to scale it. We're actually going the complete opposite way and going one-to-one. Partly we tested during last year, and it worked really well, and even more so, we actually liked it. So we changed quite a lot of our setup to suit that, because you can work more closely with companies and you can get better results for them by doing it. But there's all kinds of ways. The key here is you find your way and make that work. So as a sales pipeline, as a funnel, we've all seen these. You have a top of funnel because it's broader, more people will know you than buy from you. You've outreach, it could be to your website or it could be social. Especially on B2B, LinkedIn is a really good channel for this. It could be browsing your social profile or your website, and then the action taken. This is the key bit. What is that action? How do you get people to take that action? You deliver whatever the request was. There's a follow-up afterwards, or it could be messages, and they buy, testimonial, and review. And you have a number of different things you then do. I would be measuring then how many clients took that action every month, as an example. That's the follow-up on calls, and the number that buy each month. That's what matters. I wouldn't be measuring clicks, open rates. We don't do any of that stuff because it doesn't actually matter. Now, if nobody showed up to this event, then I would look and say, oh, well, the email's delivered. Was the open rates and click rates that matters. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. And I can see, no, there are plenty of people here in the session, so it is it's not something we'd worry about. So getting it going is usually the key. And down here, all that's happening here is time. I can tell you that can be fast or slow, depending on the client, depending on how you operate. But there's one thing I would ask everyone here, especially when you're in the consulting business, is how many clients do you really need? And it's so often the case that you need a lot less than you think. So you might only want 1 or 2 new clients a month. Some consultants need less than that. So you'd start here and say, well, actually, I only need, let's say I'm saying for us, actually, I can do that. The build your sales pipeline for consultants. I tend to only want one consultancy a month for that because I get quite engaged and it takes time. So we do one new one a month in a cycle. Same as we do one on the e-commerce side and we do one on the others. So it makes it very focused for us. So that's all I want. So I'll say, let's say 1 to 2 here. That's it. So if I want 1 to 2 clients, how many do I need to take an action? It's actually quite few. Do I need advertising to do that? I'd be thinking, no, you don't. Do I need 1,000 people to come to a webinar or sign up for one? No, you don't. Do I need to go very broad? No, you don't, because it's very targeted. And there's so many cases that the target at the end, when it comes to someone I really need, is quite low. The biggest problem is up here, going too broad. So if we go the other way up, we begin to think, well, actually, this might be easier than we thought. And the problem is how we're getting people in the first place. And I'm going to go a little bit more into that. Things to avoid, reach, views, clicks, click-through rates, being viral, all that to me is complete and utter nonsense. I don't care how big a consultancy is. It doesn't matter. You don't need to be viral. There are so many factual data studies being done. Going viral doesn't mean you will sell. If you're in the consumer business, it can, but I would still not aim for that at all. I'd much prefer a very targeted reach, even with the consumer space, because you have a bigger influence and you have a much greater chance of replication. Consultant echo chambers, there's a lot of those about. They're in every industry, these things. So how to avoid those means you don't start talking to others, joining other consultant groups. If you take either LinkedIn or Facebook, there's lots of groups you can join there. They're not your clients, so you're speaking to the wrong people. So it's quite important to avoid those. What only matters is the results, basically, your sales, and work backwards from there. Point we made already, it's much more about who you exclude in a sense than who you include. So deciding who we're targeting in, deciding that the rest of the people are not in our business. It makes life a lot simpler. It makes the call to actions clearer. It makes everything you do in your business simpler. So business design, this is what it looks like. I know I'm under a little bit of pressure for time, but we'll get through this. This is what we aim to get to. So you get traffic of some form, and you need to make the decision in this. What does the traffic look like? I do a lot with email because I know it. It works well for us, and I've worked with it for years. I also do social, but social is actually more later in our pipeline. And then they get to your website or social, and what's your engagement mechanism? What do I want them to do? In this case, I wanted people to join a webinar. And some people will buy. I'm not expecting anyone to buy from this today. That's not the setup for this one. In some cases, we do. So when I do the email for sales session, for example, it's a low ticket item. then we'll get several people buying. I think the last one we had 6 people buying immediately, and then another few days later. But we don't bank on that. The vast majority are considering, what is this? Is this useful to me? Is it for me? And then you have a follow-up, and then people will buy. A lot of others won't. So there might be an email sequence, there could be newsletter, there could be social posts they'll see after the sessions, and then they might buy. That's all you're trying to do. Then you get reviews, surveys. Surveys should feed back into getting more traffic, as well as repurchases. And that's your business design. And then you get testimonials, will help you get more clients. Every company has this going on in one form or another, usually somewhat unstructured, usually quite tactical, and it's usually on a cycle here. And then the other one goes up to buy. That's usually what you see. What you need in terms of a sales pipeline is to have the whole thing structured. I would have more your business focus here, because that's what's going to lead to higher value clients, repurchases, and content for you to position the business. We'd often add things outside. So if I mentioned earlier an industry survey, right? So you might see, what's the state of, we'd want in the UK, which is interesting, what's the state of ISO in the UK? Pains, challenges, all that sort of stuff, which was great content for the target client. That's what you do. Just trying to build all that up. It's not easy. It's just not. I hope I painted a picture for you, at least the things that matter, how to begin to put this together for yourself. It is hard to see it for yourself. We have the same challenge. We spend more time thinking about our own business sometimes than we do others, because it's hard to step outside of your own world. So we have 13 minutes left. I have 2 more things I want to cover. And one is, if anyone's interested in getting help building the sales pipeline, to get in touch. We can do that. We have a service that works just on that. And then the second part is how you can help your clients, because there are options for that as well, to add services to your consulting business to help clients. There are 2 things left for today's session. And I have a very quick slide on this one. We've actually have a sales pipeline program. When I say I was a reluctant consultant, I was reluctant with this as well. We do this for other businesses, and yet we work with lots of consultants. So that's why we said, it was a few years ago, that we should actually be doing this specifically for consultants as well, because they are businesses as well. So hence we have that. It's an over an 8-week program. It's all one-to-one. The generic stuff for me does not work. It's very hard to cover the details. I have the exact same with e-commerce companies. I do that as well, and they're also one-to-one, because it's all about the detail. What exactly do your clients want? How exactly are you going to tailor this to speak to your clients? When we see your business objectives and then I look at your web page, and the disconnects are nearly always there. It's very hard to do that in a group. So that's why we do all this in one-to-one sessions. Support, advice, and help. We actually sort things out for you as well, so you can have your own sales pipeline. Anyone interested, let us know. Reply to one of the mails you got to attend this session if you want, or just directly email myself or Kaisa. For the non-Swedes here, it's probably easier to write Edward than it is Kaisa. So reply to either of us, and we'll be glad to set up a call to discuss. It is limited, so I'm looking at March for that session actually, because we are booked, and we tend to take one a month. That's our plan in terms of our bandwidth. Right, opportunity. If I go back to this one, this is the result of reviewing 262 companies and their use of digital within their business. There is close on 100 questions asking them about different things as to how they operate their company from a digital sales and marketing perspective. And you can see they should be up here, but they're not. And we've tracking this. This is the summary. When I do year on year, it's the same. There's a small improvement year on year. Sorry, a bit of a dip in 2023 for some reason. So how do companies improve? therein lies an opportunity. And what we have found out, and this is one of the reasons we're talking a lot more with consultants these days, we've worked with a consulting company, Kunskap Partners, in Sweden now for years. I think 2018. I can't actually remember when we started our first one. No, it was well before that, 2016 or 17, because it was before the pandemic, and we had to change how we did that operation. That's when we started webinars, why we got quite comfortable with them. Now, this isn't, I know we're talking about digital sales and marketing and digital setups and digitization. It's not a technical issue at all. We've worked at so many companies. It's not that it's a big intellectual, difficult problem to solve either. In fact, it's almost the opposite in most cases. Most times it's clarity. What exactly are we trying to achieve? Just like we went through in the first 40 minutes of the session here. Who are we really selling to? What are we really trying to get them to do? And that's like a speaking partner. That's the primary skill set that we need. And what I like here is with business and management consultants, they tend to have the skill set for that. They listen twice as much as they might talk. They will be a good speaking partner. Now, what does matter, and this is where we worked with a lot of consultants, is structure. Because anyone can have a conversation, but where is it leading to? And how do we pick up next week's one with last week's one and next month's one? And that's why the structure matters for strategy. Anyone who works with digital strategy or any strategy work, structure is a big part of that. So what we've been doing is using a framework for that. Now, I came up with a framework because I was asked questions as to how we made digital work. I started selling digital products online early days of when Google AdWords was around. We moved from TV, print to digital. Then tested out, does this work for non-digital products? So we started working on getting leads in for kitchen retail, for home improvement, very physical products, same thing. So we did principles in many different sectors and then tried to explain, well, what does that actually mean? How does it work? And I came up with the framework. And we've used that now by, the last 2 years, it was 262 companies have actually gone through it to use it to structure how they work. And it's all based on how people buy. It's quite simple. Because to me, that's the only way you can sell. You react how people buy. So we have about 20 plus certified consultants, advisors out there today. And that is a program that could be of interest to consultants here today. This one is used by Almi and Skåne since 2018. Almi, it's a state organization that helps businesses. We have 20 plus certified consultants today. And this is the bit that I focus on. I know sometimes I shouldn't be that direct about it, but I'm only interested in selling something that works. 99% of those companies who use this says it will help their sales. And I'm not talking about the consulting companies. I'm talking about the 450 plus companies that over the years have used this. It helped them structure their sales and marketing. And that's, to me, success, as it were. That's why we want more people using this. And we need more help to do that. I'm going to show you a very quick video, and literally it is seconds. And you don't hear that probably, right? Okay. So I can't, I don't think I can solve that. Failure on my part. I need to load this up separately. It was a brilliant way of telling us how it worked for him. And you're going to have to just take my word for it. The video doesn't give us sound, and this one doesn't either. And I had a second one that was equally good. And basically it was saying it gave him a structure that he had a website, he had social, he did his newsletter, and this is a means of tying it all together. So he felt like in control of a structure. And then that works. So there is an option. And again, this is just, given we have consultants in the room, that's why we added this section on. If anyone's interested in adding a new service to their offering to use it in your business, you can leverage your current skills in something that's fairly in demand. Lots of companies have this problem. There's an option to do that. We have a certification program for that, and I'm not selling that today, and I'll tell you why. The next intake is in March for this. We have a launch then. This is the pre-launch. On the 6th of March, we're actually launching it in a webinar session with Kunskap partners in Sweden. It's a 10-week program for you to add an in-demand service. The launch is then, so this is a pre. So anyone's interested in this, again, do the same thing, send an email to myself or Kaisa, and we can have a conversation about it. I'm only running this as a one-to-one as well. We do have an online element to it, but that's to get you up to speed to a certain level. So as then when we have a real start in session 1, that you'll actually know what I'm talking about, because we want this to be at the right level. Now, the interesting thing here is there is also help. So if you have clients that want it, this is the kind of stuff we can work through. So if, for example, your clients tend to be e-commerce clients, we would then tailor that one-to-one session to make sure you're ready for that. If your clients tend to be of a certain type, they're B2B clients, or there are certain aspects to the industry you solve, we would then tailor our conversation to that. Hence, I do the one-to-one. I'd rather get another 12 consultants this year who are certified and know what they're doing than to get 50 through an online program that they half know what they're doing. Hence, we do it in this way. So anyone's interested in that, let us know. Again, yeah, very limited availability. Kaisa would take some of those sessions. I drive most of these particular ones because they're on the framework, but there are certain aspects that Kaisa does quite a bit in as well that will I would help. So next, today we are, yes, we have 3 minutes. Hopefully I haven't been going too quickly with this. So build your sales pipeline. If you're interested, email us in. I think there's a huge opportunity for most businesses and consultants today to do this and to structure it. That it's not just about random posting or randomly looking for clients when we need them, but really positioning your consultancy business, be it that you're 1 person or 20. You're positioning yourself and your business in the segment, and that's what we can help you do. And the second part is, if you want to add digital strategy as a service to your consultancy business, there's an option for that coming in March. You can get in touch with us if you're interested in that. Alternatively, you can go to a webinar. There's a session on the 6th of March that is only relating to that service, if anyone's interested in that. That's what we've got to today. So, did you have any other questions that we cover off, Kaisa, as we went?
I think so. It's been a very quiet crowd, and I assume that's because everybody been listening to the session. That's how I prefer to interpret it as.
Yeah.
So hopefully everything has been very clear. But we have a minute or two here. Any questions in relation to either sort of the sales pipeline bit and how to build that, or the digital scorecard framework? Go for it. We're here for another couple of minutes.
One I had is not in this list, but it's one that emailed into me earlier, and they haven't come up here. And that is, what's the difference between this and just posting on LinkedIn and doing direct outreach? The main thing here is that's one part, is how I explain that. So LinkedIn outreach, what are you outreaching with, is the big question. Where does it fit in? What else do you need around that to position yourself? Too many use LinkedIn as a tactical tool. So outreach when I need clients, let's contact loads of people, get them into a webinar or a session, or just a call so they can sell them something. It's quite tactical. The difference here is you're actually looking at your business more holistically. It's the same if you were just advertising. So what are you going to advertise? What are you going to promote? How are you going to make sure that that's running all the time, even when you're busy? That's what this is all about. Much more holistic view of how you can build a sales pipeline within your business. That was one we often get around tactics versus strategy. The detail comes into the sessions when you actually start working with it. You begin to see more clearly okay, that's only a little piece of the puzzle. But it usually is an important piece for B2B consultants. Funny enough, Facebook can also be really good. We found that a lot of the time as well. A lot of B2B happens there. Most depends on the country to a degree, but the age profile tends to be right in Facebook users versus, for example, Instagram, usually less so.
Yeah, I think the main point there is that you're putting all the pieces together. If you go back and think about the business design, what does that look like for your company? That is, I think, the key part there. No more questions coming in anyway. Nobody's jumping up and down or raising their hand there. So we just assume everything was clear. Delighted to have everybody here. I was going to say, from our point of view, everybody stayed. That's always also a good sign. And thank you very much.
Yeah. Listen, see you another time, and anything we can help with, just email in. And thanks for your time today. See you another time. Bye now.